Folks, I wanted to talk about the American sanctions targeted at Russian oil and gas companies that were just um, announced. But also, I want to talk about just the effectiveness of the Western strategy against Russia and the messaging that the West has had in relation to this war vis-a-vis Russia, but also how the West messages towards the normal people in America and in Europe. Because what I found to be quite interesting is when I'm engaging with Americans and with Europeans, is that the average American and the average European doesn't actually understand the true extent of how powerful Russia is and the true state of the war between Russia and NATO. Because what is happening is that the West lies about what's happening in the war to the American and to the European public. And because the West lies so much, people in the West don't have a true understanding of where the war is, but also people don't get a true reflection of the power of Russia. And I found this to be a big disservice to the American public and the European public. But most importantly, I just don't like it when people lie to me. Like, and I know that in this particular instance, they're not lying to me; they are lying to Americans and they are lying to Europeans. I just don't lie. Tell the truth, because when you tell the truth, you are in a better position to actually deal with the reality of the situation. And one of the things that the Western media and the Western leaders lie about when it comes to the war with Russia is they lie about who is winning the war. They lie about the impact of the sanctions on the Russian economy. They've been telling the Western audiences that the Russian economy is on its knees at any moment now. It's going to collapse. They've been saying the Russian economy is collapsing since the war began in 2022. They've been saying any moment now the Russian economy is going to collapse any moment now. Year after year, they are saying any moment now, especially on Fox News with Jack Keane, or retired General Jack Keane, who's always lying on Fox News about Russia. And I'm saying that he's lying because I don't think that he believes what he's saying. And I don't think that he's an idiot, or that he doesn't know the power that Russia has or the strength of the Russian economy. I believe that he's lying. Same can be said about Mark Levin, who also lies through his teeth about the nature of this war, or the state in which this war is in, and the power that Russia has. Let's just settle this, folks, once and for all. Russia is not losing this war. They're not losing. They're not losing, they're not struggling. In fact, the party that is in really dire straits in this war is Ukraine. This is why now Ukraine is scrambling to get whatever it can get from anyone who's going to get it, because they don't have enough ammunition, they don't have enough weapons, they've run out of men, or they are running out of men now. They are getting men out of prison, putting them on the front lines to fight. They are getting older men, older than 62, elderly men to fight. They are running out of men. If this war continues for a number of years, eventually Ukraine, they won't have enough men to fight. They're going to have to call back the women who became refugees to come back and fight. But in order for us to understand also the extent of these sanctions on Russia, we have to look in terms of what happened when the West imposed sanctions on Russia after the annexation of Crimea. What actually happened after that, Russia slowly over the number of years of between 2014 and 2022, what Russia was doing what we call it in economics import substitution, building local industries to replace the imports that they were having from the outside world, especially the world that was affected by sanctions, like the imports that they were having from the European Union and other nations who are friendly with the West, like Japan or South Korea and Australia, Canada, the United States. And subsequently, what has happened? Obviously, we saw a decline in the Russian economy because of that. But after a number of years, they've been able to rebuild these industries to be able to be actually self-sufficient. To the point that, for the most part, now the Russian economy is self-sufficient. In fact, we started seeing the Russian economy actually has, ever since this portion of the war started in 2022, has actually been growing instead of shrinking. They've actually successfully been able to sanctions proof their economy, diversifying their foreign exchange reserves, diversifying where they buy raw materials, buying more and more from the East and from Africa and South America, and combination of strategies of import substitution, diversification of sources. And then Russia and China in particular moved more and more closer together, which has actually been the key factor that has helped Russia to withstand a lot of these sanctions. By 2023, for instance, right about half of Russia's oil and petroleum exports were actually had been directed at China. And then now, with India having increased their purchases of Russian energy, this has also subsequently assisted them to buffer themselves from the impact of these sanctions. But also now, Europe has continued to buy Russian and oil and gas. That they are saying that their aim is that by 2027 they would stop to buy Russian oil and gas. But the problem, even with that goal, because 2025, 2027, that's 2 years, they need to be able to have infrastructure that's going to deliver energy to their shores in a manner that is as cheap as what Russia is able to do through the pipelines, all of these existing pipelines that deliver oil and gas to Russia, including to Europe, including pipelines that actually go through Ukraine. Do you guys know that Ukraine actually makes money because of the pipeline that goes through Ukraine to Europe, delivering Russian gas? That is how important Russian oil and gas is to Europe and to Ukraine. So, such that even the sanctions that were imposed recently don't really have much of an impact because Europe will continue to buy Russian oil and gas for a foreseeable future. So, what I'm saying is that maybe it's about time that the West actually levels with the people and say, listen, we have no way of controlling this guy. We have no way of winning this war because the truth of the matter is that you don't. And one of the key signs of strength, by the way, on the side of Russia, is that Russia is refusing to come to the negotiating table. Why would Russia refuse to come to the negotiating table unless, of course, Russia had upper hand right now on this war? Because when it comes to peace in the middle of the war, the weaker nation is the one that often sues for peace. which is what Ukraine right now is trying to get peace as much as possible, but Russia is not interested because they actually think that if they continue in this fashion, they will win, and they are not wrong. So, so these sanctions that were put on Russia by the US a couple of days ago or last week are for the most part purely symbolic. They have no impact at all on Russia right now. I think the entire impact of sanctions on Russia has already been baked in right now on the Russian economy. I don't see any more impact being caused by sanctions that can be tangibly seen on the Russian economy. The US, by the way, is buying Russian Russian uranium, enriched uranium, and the US is also buying Russian radioisotopes, some of which are only manufactured in Russia. So this matter is a lot more complicated than they are actually telling the public, both the American public and the European public. I made this prediction when this war started in 2022 that Russia would win this war. And some Europeans came on my video. Oh man, they abused me to no end, telling me that I don't know anything, wada 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 wada. And it turns out my prediction has been accurate. And the longer the war continues, the more it becomes evident that Russia is winning the war. And I have not even factored in the fact that Russia right now can level Ukraine with the kind of weapons that they have. But they have chosen not to do that. And also the fact that Russia has the ability to bomb Ukraine to the ground and have chosen not to do it is something that the West is not telling the Western public. The Western public is not aware of the capability that Russia has of reducing Ukraine into a parking lot. They are aware of this, but they are not telling the public. And hence, a lot of American civilians who discuss these issues, or European civilians, they think that Ukraine actually has a chance to win. Actually, no, they don't have a chance to win. They absolutely stand no chance at winning. Absolutely none. So it's about time that the Western powers level with their people. There is no path to victory for Ukraine on this war. There is no way for the West to control Putin or to get Putin to do what they want him to do. Putin is not Maduro or Assad. He is a leader of a superpower that has more nuclear warheads than the United States of America.